Welcome back to talkSPORT Cricket. Jarrod Kimber here with Steve Harmison. Change of pace from yesterday when we talked about champing and rigs and all those sorts of things. Remember, you can go and see the great cricketer in London tonight at the Apollo. I think they've still got some tickets available. But a different kind of rig today. Steve Harmison is in with me, and we're going to talk about Ashes cricket. Throw it ahead. At the moment, I think what Australia made just over 200 odd last night. Again, struggling on a difficult wicket, and England in a position slightly behind in this game with India as favourites going into the next session. I thought, Harmy, maybe one of the best things to do would be to look at the 211s. Who do you want to start with? Which team do you want to start with? No. Should we put your microphone on?
I'll put my microphone on, yeah. Either or, to be fair. I think both teams have got settled disciplines, different ones. I think the settled discipline for Australia would be their bowlers.
Yeah.
I think we can name them. I think England's settled discipline with a bat, we can probably name them top 7.
Most of them as well. So let's go with Australia first then, because I think the most unsettled part of either of these sides at the moment is Australia's top order. Usman Khawaja is going to open in the Ashes, but he has not looked like he's in any kind of form at all. But I just don't see any chance of them being able to drop him before the Ashes.
No, I think in his experience, I think the interesting one for me would be Labuschagne. I think they can drop Khawaja if you pick Labuschagne. I don't think you can drop Khawaja and Labuschagne in such a short space of time before leading into the Ashes. So one of them plays, I think both of them will play, but I think one of them plays, and the likely one is probably Usman, because he's a natural opening batter. That's where you've got Australia got problem position, and 1, 2, and 3 they've had an issue there. So they've got to find a way of settling that. They've got the rest of this West Indies series, which they look as though they're not playing on the best of wickets, are they? Let's be fair.
No, they've batted poorly on bad wickets, but they've certainly made enough runs to get past the West Indies. So, okay, we'll say Usman's in. Who's he opening with in the Ashes for you?
I just think you've got to stick with Knostas if that's what you're going to go with. They're a little bit like what England were. Right, we're going to back Zak Crawley and Bowker back, we're going to stick with him. So you either stick with him, you bring McSweeney in, but whatever you do, you're going to have to do it quickly and say, right, you've arguably got the Ashes. I know you're playing at home and you can chop and change because the fluctuation of what runs they're scoring in between times, because obviously there'll be Shield games on and there'll be a big Shield build up towards it. But I think once you finish the West Indies, whoever is picking the slide, George Bailey and Andrew McDonald and Pat Cummins, right, that's our man. He's got 5 games, he's in. Yeah. And stick with that. And if it is Knostas, well, you know what you're going to get. We're going to criticise England, for kamikaze style, some of the stuff. But this is England. We know this is the way they're going to play. And if this lad comes in, he's just young. I think for me it's calming him down in such a way which is, right, we know you want to play a brand of cricket which is different to any normal Australian player who plays at the top of the order. But you have to give him a little bit of license to be himself. But you've also got to sit him down and say, look, we're all right with you being aggressive, but be consistently aggressive. Don't be unpredictable. Yeah, I mean, Rishabh Pant might get away with it in the middle order, but Rishabh Pant doesn't. He is consistent to the way he plays.
That's the thing.
I don't think Knostas is.
I don't think Knostas knows the way he wants to play. He gave an interview before the West Indies where he was like, the way I played in Melbourne was not necessarily how I normally play. I don't think there's any way they can open with Knostas in the Ashes. I think it would ruin him.
Then it becomes McSweeney.
Well, so you have a couple of different options here. Usman can open with Marnus, and McSweeney can go to 3, which is McSweeney's best spot. The other option is that Usman opens with McSweeney again, and they keep Green at number 3. So Green is also struggling at number 3. I know he got some runs last night, 40-odd or whatever.
But they're getting 40s. They're not getting 100s.
They're not.
This is the thing with Marnus, and I said this at the time when they dropped him. Be careful when you drop somebody, because at that age where you're thinking, right, once you for me, I've always been a big believer. It was the same with Blundell when we were in New Zealand. It's like, if you're going to drop somebody and you're ending their career, be careful that, is the grass greener on the other side of who you're going to bring in, first and foremost? I don't think it was. Cameron Green is a talented player, but is he a number 3? You're fudging it. If you're saying Marnus goes in and McSweeney opens bats at 3 because that's where he naturally places. Marnus can turn around and go, hold on, I've got hundreds in Test cricket at batting at 3. Why am I might be going through a bit of a bad time, but I just need to be taken out back end of this summer. I think he'll be back. I think Marnus Labuschagne will bat 3 for Australia, and I would bat him at 3 for Australia because of his experience and what he gives, and I think he gives a little bit of an aura because he's scored Test match runs. He just needs to find a way of coming out, putting a run together, and he'll go back in and he'll be better for it.
Then who do you open with?
I would it's either Cnostas or McSweeney. If it's not Cnostas, it's McSweeney. If it's not Sweeney, it's Cnostas. You whichever one you punt on, because it is a punt. You put up with Cnostas's unpredictability, a little bit like we have with Zak, and then you have the anchor, which is Usman.
So there are 2 other sort of more random things they could do as well. Green could open.
Yeah, but you go and this is the Ashes. I think there's too much. It's fine opening against the West Indies. It's fine opening, might be fine opening. Not in the Ashes. I think with the Ashes, you find out all these obscure things leading into it or being around it, but not actually in it.
I don't think they'll do that because he hasn't looked very good at 3. But the other option is also Inglis at 3. They really like Inglis. I don't think
I'd be happy if Inglis is at 3 if I was an England bowler.
Yeah, I think that would be the same as if Australia went up against Bethel at 3. I think Australia would be pretty happy
That's
as well.
That's a good shout.
It's not that they're not talented players. We know that both of them can play, but they're not number 3s. All right, number 4 and 5 is absolutely settled in Smith and Ted. We don't have to worry about them. Number 6 at the moment is Webster. If Green can bowl, do you pick Green at 6 or do you pick Webster at 6?
I'd probably pick Green at 6 because I think he bowls a heavier ball, and I think he's
a better bat as well.
He's a better bat, but I think Webster hasn't let them down. A bit like Reddy here, and he's bowling. He hasn't let them down.
No,
I would go as much as I don't think you can have them both in the same side. I would go with Cameron Green. I think Cameron Green's qualities with the ball can cause England trouble because he makes the ball bounce. That big tall release point.
Yeah,
he can bowl a heavier ball on Australian pitches. I think England. I'm not saying England would worry about Cam Green's bowling.
It's a good 5th option.
But I think they'd be more concerned about his bowling than they would Bo Webster's, and that's nothing against Bo.
No, Bo Webster's more of a holding bowler.
He is,
and he can give you a little bit of off spin as well. He's quite variable, but Green is the better bowler. Because there is an option here if they wanted to go nuts, where Inglis comes in and bats at 3. And then you have Green at 6 and Webster at 7.
Yeah, I think Carey's been such a good firefighter, so experienced, so calm under pressure for Australia. I think to make that change and make that decision, I think that would be wrong. I wouldn't advocate for
I don't
that.
think they'll do it.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
But you
advocate
can
for that.
see how.
I think he's too important.
Yeah.
He's too important with the gloves. I think he's too important in the game, and I think his skill sets with his fighting qualities with bat and his all-round wicket-keeping ability with managing in between overs and calming bowlers and communication and everything that goes with it. These are things that people from outside the cricket don't see, which are so valuable to Pat, the captain. I think to other senior bowlers. I think to slip fielders. I think the all-round package of Alex Carey, I think, is so valuable from an experience point of view that I think it would be ridiculous to leave him out at this stage, leading into the Ashes.
I think if they were going to do it, they would have had to have done that by now. But it was interesting that when Smith didn't play, Inglis batted at 4. So they are thinking, and I don't think he does that much in Shield cricket. I think he usually bats 5, 6, 7. So it does show you that they're thinking a little bit differently. But it is a way if they want to fit all that all-round talent in. Part of this is only if Cameron Green can bowl, because if Cameron Green can't bowl, I'm not sure how you fit him in the side.
Yeah, you don't fit him in the side. And I think as well as that, you're looking for a 5th bowling option, right? England need a 5th bowling option because their spinner is not. He's not as consistent as you want him to be. I mean, these 4 lads have been so consistent for Australia; it's ridiculous. So you don't need to look at it and think, right, oh, Cameron Green's a better bowler than Bo Webster. Either or is filling in so many insignificant overs really. When you look at how good Cummins, Hazelwood, Stark and Lyon are,
One of the reasons green is important, though, is it means that Cummins doesn't have to bowl as many of the short ball spells.
Yeah.
So it does allow them that little bit of flexibility.
But again, with Ben, like with Stokes, I'm not sure I'd be wanting Cameron Green's body to be bowling too many short balls.
Well, no. But even 1 or 2 a test saves Cummins, doesn't it, if you go in there. Okay, so Stark, Cummins, Hazelwood, Lyon is going to be the opening bowling lineup unless something weird happens.
Yeah,
now, they've dropped Lyon for this test.
Yeah.
I think against India, they shouldn't have played Lyon in every game last time. They have Boland there. Hazelwood is the one that they're a little bit worried about injury-wise, but they are all a year older again, and they are getting towards the end. But with Boland as the backup, that's fine. If Boland can bowl the way he usually does, but if England get in his head like they did in the Ashes out here, that makes that a little bit trickier. Yeah,
quite possibly. I think the seam attack is comfortable. It's Hazelwood, Stark, Cummins, and then obviously you've got Nathan, who hasn't played a massive amount of Ashes cricket, in recent past, having getting injured here at Lords. Yeah. I think it's different when you look at smaller tours, littler tours away from Australia. You can see little subtle changes or whatever, but when you go back to the consistency of Australia, your consistency of your summer, you're going back to your sort of stateside, you're playing a little bit of Shield cricket, you're getting ready for the test match, you're at home, you're in your own bed, you're ready for your own summer, what is consistent about the way test match cricket is in Australia over the course of a 5 test match summer against Australia. I think some of these decisions or some of these changes, subtle little changes they're making to find out who's going to be ready and what, they go out the window, because what they'll do is they'll go back to type, they'll go back to, for me, you would go back to consistency. Boland will be the backup seam bowler for whoever gets injured or in back-to-back games if somebody's flagging. Nathan Lyon will probably play in all 5 test matches. I can't see Australia playing 4 seamers against England.
I'd be shocked if Lyon plays in all 5 test matches.
Where does
Just because he basically wasn't used against India at times. If the wickets are anything like we saw against India, then I don't think he plays all 5. If they go back to more traditional Australian wickets, then obviously he will play in all 5.
Well, and that comes down to the 5th bowling option.
Well, Webster can bowl off spin. Travis Head can bowl off spin, so it's not like they don't have anything. And Webster was a specialist spinner for years until he started bowling, small seam up. So
I just see Lyon playing. I can see them being consistent in Lyon playing.
I think it's really interesting he's not playing in this game. It's very rare they go anywhere and Lyon doesn't play. The fact he's not playing in this test match makes me feel that they are starting to think that they do not need him all the time. Cricket's just changed, right? And because they have Webster as well, that allows them. Okay, England. Ben Duckett is probably going Army. Who's he opening with?
Zak Crawley. He will open with Zak Crawley. There's too much time and effort invested in Zak.
Will Crawley play all 5 tests?
Yes.
Even if he averages 25?
Even if he averages 25.
Okay.
With this lot, he will.
So would you do Crawley?
That's a different question.
Would you do Crawley?
I would go yes, because I'm not seeing a massively other option that's standing out. And
Hamid Sibley?
I wouldn't go back to Hamid.
No, I wouldn't. I like Sibley.
I'd potentially go back to Sibley, because I think he wasn't harshly done by. I think it was just a bad time for him he got into a bit of a rut, and I think he's a better cricketer now for it. So I'd potentially take him with us in that Lions tour. I think England will have 35 players in Australia before the first test match, and I think Dom Sibley will be one of them. But I don't think he will start the series, because I think unless bar an injury, even if Zak has a couple of low scores in Perth, I still think he plays in the second test match.
I'm with you. I can't see them making a change, but if you were to make a change, then I think that's obviously the
I think
spot
Sibley would be the one for me. I'd change Zak for, but I'd give him a chance. Like the investment that they've had in Zak.
There is something called
a
sunk cost fallacy, though, where you think because you've invested so much, you have to keep investing.
But I think what they've invested for was for Australia.
Australian Ashes. Yep, fair enough.
That's him and Shoaib are in the same boat.
At 3?
Pope's a little bit different, because I don't think Pope...
I haven't said Pope. Yeah, it could be Bethel.
Pope was invested in that. This Bethel one is intriguing me. I think this kid is a quality player. I think he's a fantastic player. He's going to be the prospect and the ceiling level of Jacob is massive. But it'll still come back to the fact that he still hasn't scored a professional 100.
It's very hard. I mean, we
Throw
are
him in.
seeing a lot of teams punting on the number 3 position or using other players or Raymond Reefer or Vian Mulder, all these different things. And Jacob Bethel is part of that, right? He's what we now call a false 3, where you just put someone up there. It seems to me a very, very tough situation to put him in. Having said that, if Pope doesn't make runs, they have to just make a change.
If Pope doesn't make runs, they'll have to, yes, I agree, they have to make a change. Is it Bethel? Well, it looks like he's next cab, and he played well in New Zealand. But this is the Ashes. There's going to be what?
A lot better bowling attack.
There's going to be 30 or 40,000 more people per day watching. The intensity of that, but I don't think will mind Jacob. I think he got quite a calming influences when he's under pressure. Has he got the game? Has he got the calmness to make rational decisions when the pressure of Hazelwood, Nathan Lyon, Hazelwood, Stark, Cummins and Lyon are at him and mentioning? I still come back to the fact in the start of the summer, and we didn't drag him back to play against Zimbabwe to potentially get that first 100. Or he's not gone and played for Warwickshire and batted at number 3. Warwickshire batted him at 5 or 6, I think, didn't it? So all these little things suggest to me I think we need to give Bethel a little bit more time to develop, especially in Test match cricket, rather than throw them into the heat of the battle of batting number 3 in the cauldron, especially behind somebody like Zak Crawley. And then all of a sudden we are now asking a huge amount of Joe Root, Harry Brook and Ben Stokes.
Root and Brook obviously going to bat where they're going to bat.
Yeah.
Is there any argument to be made? Is there any suggestion that Smith and Stokes should change in the batting order?
A huge amount of argument, and I think that could develop and could happen. That largely depends on what happens in the rest of this series. I think if Jamie Smith goes and continues the trajectory he's on and gets 100 at Manchester or gets 100 at Lords, I think you might find it might suit Ben Stokes. And I've said this for quite a while, that the person that Ben Stokes was looking for when they got rid of Ben Foakes to bring in a wicketkeeper that could bat with a tail in an aggressive manner, the role he was looking for, he would be the one that would execute it perfectly. But we were looking for a number 7, we weren't looking for a number 6. And now we might have just stumbled across a number 6 because of how good Jimmy Smith is. So I wouldn't have an argument with Ben going to 7, and I think Ben will probably go to 7 eventually. Whether it's this winter, I'm not so sure, but I think it will be very, very soon, because that role he wants somebody to fulfill, I actually think there's nobody to do it better than actually Ben himself.
The left-hander option, then, if Bethel's in the side, you've got Duckett, Bethel and Stokes, so you can move Stokes down to number 7. If not, you have a bunch of right-handers in a row. Not a big issue against Australia. They don't have a left-arm figure spinner or a wrist spinner or anything. I'm not saying they don't bowl well against right-handers or anything, but it's not as big a deal as it might be if you're going to Asia and you want the left-right a little bit more. But it's worth remembering. Are you taking Wokes?
From a selection point of view, if you had asked me at the start of the summer, if they had this conversation during the Zimbabwe test, I would have said yes. I'm now 50-50. I think the world of Chris Wokes. I think he's been brilliant for England. He's bided his time. He's waited for Broad and Anderson to go. Lost the zip at the start of last summer. Got it back towards the end of the summer. If he rediscovers it and gets it back, then I'll take him. Possibly just to play in Brisbane and maybe in Melbourne on Boxing Day. But at this moment in time, after what I've seen so far in this Test series, the clamour to get Chris Wokes into Australia, I don't think there'll be too many on the sort of cheerleader squad.
He ended up getting wickets yesterday, which was nice, but again, he didn't look incisive. He didn't look dangerous in any way. Do you take Potts then?
I think Potts will be in there. I think they'll all go. I think Wokes will go because I think...
I would have Potts. I would be using Potts for the rest of this series ahead of Wokes right now, based on what I've seen so far.
Yeah, but it's either Potts or Cook in it, really. It's Potts or Cook.
Yeah.
So whichever one. And I like Potts better than Cook, but I think they need to find out about Cook. Playing him in a one-off game against Zimbabwe, not for me. You've got to find out about him. We might find out about him at Manchester. I don't think we'll find out about him at the Oval, but we might at Manchester. They might have to make that change. They'll all be going, because England will take... I've got a list in front of me here, and I've got Archer, Wood, Wokes, Atkinson, Tom.
You're going ahead of my order.
I know, but I'm going to continue because I'm keep going. Cook, Potts, Stokes, Pennington, Baker, Turner, Singdale and Carse. These are the bowlers that have bowled in the Championship that England selectors like.
One of those names is made up.
All of them will be in Australia, I think. It's some with either the Lions or England's full squad.
So I suppose my question is, do you think they need a Wokes, Potts, Cook in Australia with everything we've seen of those wickets of recent times?
Yes,
okay.
I think we do.
So if you, right now...
Some places might need 2 of them.
Yeah, but that's true as well. Right now, which one of those 3 would you pick?
Right now, I've said all along, I'd pick Potts because he's durable. We know what you're going to get with him. There's not been a great drop-off. I think there's a big... It's hard to say there's been a big drop-off in Sam Cook from first to second innings in the Zimbabwe Test match, because judging somebody on one Test match against Zimbabwe would be so unfair, and it would be so cruel on Sam. So that's why I'd like to see him again. We know what Potts can do. There's been a drop-off in Chris Wokes, and that's been an alarming drop-off. But his batting and the all-round package, I think, is there. I look at this side, and you're talking about sides, 1 to 11. I mean, Carse, Archer, Wood, Stokes, Bashir will be my bowling attack for Perth. And then I'll make decisions on where we go after that by how the series starts to develop and play out.
Say that again.
So
your bowling
Carse
attack?
would be number 8. So we've picked 1 to 7. Carse would be 8, Archer 9, Wood 10, Shaw, Bashir 11.
Okay, all right. So that explains that. I was wondering whether you'd go Tongue or Wood. There's an element of Tongue might actually, because he's such a big guy, might also be handy in Australia, but I could do that. And
I think he might bowl too short in Australia.
I worry that he doesn't have a length in Australia, and I think Australia, weirdly enough, in Australia, I think it's a place where length is more important than almost anything else.
Yeah, and I think he might bowl a bit too short in Australia. So, but another one, he would be in that sort of big pool of bowlers that England were going to carry around. I think England will only carry 1 spare batter, and I think they'll carry 2 spare bowlers for every bowling position. I really do. I think they'll have to get their own charter plane to go from place to place, because I can see England going with a hell of a lot of armoury to try and pick a bowling unit that fits the horses for courses for any given surface they're going to be given.
You picked Jarrod Bashir in that. Is that your choice or is that England's choice?
England's choice.
What's Steve Harmison's choice?
That's the problem. We're very limited.
I can tell you what my notes say. My note says Jarrod Bashir - any living spinner.
Any living spinner, yeah, possibly. I mean, I look at the Liam Dawson argument. I don't get that, but it depends on what the other 3 seamers are. If the other 3 seamers are Carse, Archer and Wood, you could get Dawson to bowl over the wicket like Ashley Giles did and bowl at leg stump. So he's going to go at 2 and over, and Australia don't score that fast anywhere. And so, well, some will argue, well, you're picking him as a batter that can bowl a little bit of spin. Why don't you pick Jacob Bethel? I think Jacob
Dawson's
Bethel,
bowling is a lot better than Bethel.
And I think Dawson's experience at bowling that way would be a hell of a lot easier to execute than Bethel. So that's the other spinners that England have. I mean, there's not many. Carson still developing and young. Rian Ahmed playing for Leicester as a batter at the moment.
I just don't think. I just think on Australian pitches he's going to be too many hit me balls.
Yeah, too many. And then you've got his brother Farhan. That's just too young, far too young to send an 18-year-old to go into battle in the Ashes. He'll be with the Lions. He'll be in the Lions squad. Try to think of. I've got a few more on the top of my head, but
the problem with taking someone like Dawson is not actually that he's a bad bowler, because he's a fine holding bowler. It's what happens if Head has a big series, because you can't bowl him anytime Head's on, because Head's going to score about 25 runs and over, which is what happened to Leach, right?
Yeah, that's the argument of why you wouldn't take Jack. Dawson goes because he gives you a number 8. He's experienced, he's wily, and you're not looking for your spin bowler to win a game day 5 by taking 5 wickets. This is the only place you go there is Sydney, but that's changing as well. So I wouldn't have an argument if Ben Stokes wasn't bowling. If we were in a position like last year and Ben was struggling, I think the only way you could go to Australia is you play 4 seamers every single game. But now Ben's bowling, you're obliged to pick a spin bowler, and at this moment in time, like we said, they've heavily invested in Shoaib, like they have in Zak, and they're hoping the way he's bowled going into it. His skill set is perfect for Australian cricket. Now he's got to execute it. That's why that's why for me this Bazball group are under so much pressure going into Australia, because it's clearly evident, and Ben will disagree, I know for a fact he will, but it's clearly evident that the whole thing has been geared up for the first test match in Perth, over 5 test matches. Ever since Ben and Brendan came in, it's all been about beating Australia here, and then as soon as the series finished here, we're going to go and beat them there. And we've made our decisions based around skill sets for Australia rather than England. Right or wrong, I don't really care. It becomes results, and the results when that will be the legacy of Bazball, whether it's been a joke, whether it's been a success, whether Ben Stokes has completely transformed Test match cricket or he hasn't, I think will be determined from that series. And I think because of that, I really hope it does, because I do think it's been a positive influence in the game of cricket around the world. I do think these guys have been absolutely brilliant for English cricket and the wider public of how you watch cricket. I mean, over the course of the last 3 years, we've been talking about how bored we are of this Test match, and the reason why that is because of how England have pushed the game, the run rates on, and they haven't made other teams play that way. But when they've been in a contest with other teams, they've had to go with England to survive with England and stay in the game. So I'm not saying England have Ben and Brendan have completely changed the outlook of the game, but what I think they've done is, I think they've been geared up to go and win in Australia, and that will be evident when at the end of Sydney.
Jeremy, you've obviously seen a lot of Australia and England play at times. The Australian wickets have changed, right? We're talking about Wokes and Potts and Cook and these sorts of players, where generally England would be like, oh, we don't want to take any of those sorts of guys. Pitches have changed, but the one thing that we do know is that one team has a very, very good bowling attack, or a great bowling attack, and the other team has a lot of exciting batting in it. Generally, you pick the better bowling lineup in a test series when that is the case, but Australia's top order is so fragile at the moment, it's hard to really do that. What are your thoughts, based on what you've seen of the two teams?
Well, I think you've summarised, in a sense, my feelings that Australian batting isn't quite the numbers that we're accustomed to. There are holes in certain areas. Smith becomes a very important player, therefore, as far as the top order is concerned. And as far as the bowling is concerned, just general age, still more than adequate, and a very adequate backup bowler to come with the seamers. As I think we all realise, if they are going to play, you call them slightly different pitches. None of us quite know that yet.
Yeah, we don't know what it's going to be.
What sort of surfaces they're going to prepare. If they are sort of slightly more green and they do seem a little bit Boland, obviously for me comes into the game a little bit more. He's a very direct bowler and doesn't do anything wrong, really, does he? So he's an awkward customer. So I mean, as far as that's concerned, I think, look, when you get to a certain age, but they do give them rest, don't they? You've probably noticed that more than I have, how much rest they're getting, and how much rest does Hazelwood need.
I think they're now treating the 4 seamers like a quartet rather than a 3 with a backup. I think they're now thinking about it from a perspective of whoever's not quite there, we will give a rest to, which is different than what they were doing before. My other question for you is, as someone who's captained in Australia before, it's very hard to take a spinner to Australia, because generally all spinners that go to Australia, even great ones, struggle. But well before Murali was called, he was struggling in Australia. Zak Crawley had a brief period where he did okay. Graham Swan got hit. All these people get hit. Daniel Vittori's had some success. It's very hard because you can't attack very much as a spinner in Australia. It's also not a particularly easy place to stem the runs because of the extra bounce. Players can play you off the back or the front foot. Does England have a spinner, even as a backup, even as a Liam Dawson, that is going to be able to stop Australia from scoring?
I don't see that. I see it as if there are a couple of weaknesses for England, I would say one, a left arm seamer. I think you need someone like that to change an angle. And I don't think that's why I would say Arshdeep Singh, who we're watching at the moment outside, could very much become an option for India, from my opinion. batsmen here just hardly play it, Harmy. They just don't get it. We saw Hull being given a crack about a year ago, but we haven't seen much since then. He was so young, wasn't he, when they played him? So that shows you that they're aware of the issue, and I think it is an issue. And the other one is the spinner, is that the spinners here generally get the ball up and down. So they beat you, they try to beat you before the ball pitches. Yeah. But really in Australia, I think you need someone who turns the ball in the way that it does something in the air prior to pitching. I want big, strong
side spin or top spin.
Yeah, side spin, or both. That gives you an option, doesn't it? But that movement in the air that draws players outside, and they don't know quite, and they've missed the length of the ball. That's it's the John Bracewell kind of spinner who spun the ball as hard as he could every ball, and he was dangerous against Australia when he played. Even in New Zealand, he bowled them out in Auckland, very, very quickly. So they're not accustomed to that. They'll play that type of top spinner a little bit better than they will the big side spinner. So those are the two areas I think that are going to be lacking. They'll try and make them up the best they can. What else can they do? They haven't got them. So but it could prove to be a real weakness. You need to take those 20 wickets, and I'm not sure whether Bashir is going to do that. They're not going to prepare wickets for him.
No, you wouldn't think so. The height helps him because he will get bounced in Australia, so he has one advantage, and that's why they're taking him. But I can't think of too many Australian tall off spinners who've done well on shield wickets of recent times either. Top spin is a bit different, but that's not really his main skill either. Will Joe Root make 100 this time?
I hope so. I really do. I think
just to stop people talking about it.
Just to stop people talking about it. Yeah, I think looking at him now and having sort of seen and been with him over the course of the winter, I look at Joe and think he's in the best possible frame of mind and the best form he's been in going into that Ashes series, and that would encourage me that he'll go over there and he'll make 100. He'll go over there and make. I think get people off his back when people think he is one of the greatest of all time. I think if he gets one, potentially gets two, that could be the difference between England winning the series and losing the series. If Joe comes away from Australia having getting 200 or 300s, that for me, that could be England winning.
Well, based on the scores in the last couple of series in Australia, if he gets 300s, they should win almost 5-0. That's all we have time for as the players are coming back on. Thank you very much for Jeremy's brilliant late cameo, and to Harmy for doing the into the wind work all the way through that lunch as well. I'm Jarrod Kimber. We will be back after lunch with, I don't know, I'll say Neil Manthorp. We'll say Neil Manthorp and friends.